Amazing creatures in movies and fantasy novels stem from ancient myths. Today's creatures were once legends. Several have moved from imagination to reality, catching scientific attention. If I said I saw an animal with a gazelle's upper body, a zebra's lower body, and a giraffe's head, you'd think I'm crazy or describing a mythical creature. Some creatures have been seen as answers to ancient folklore and myths. These beings have moved from imagination to reality, catching the scientific community's attention. They might be stranger than legends. Imagine an animal with a gazelle's upper body, a zebra's lower body, and a giraffe's head. It sounds mythical, much like Europeans thought when they heard of the okapi from Central African locals. They called it the African unicorn. The Western scientific community ignored the okapi until the early 20th century, when they confirmed it as a real animal related to the giraffe, despite its shorter neck. If I told you about an animal with a gazelle-like upper body, zebra-like lower body, and a giraffe-like head, Europeans reacted this way to Central African stories of the okapi, dismissing it as the African unicorn. The scientific community ignored it until the early 20th century, when they confirmed it as a real animal related to the giraffe. The okapi, known as the forest giraffe, lives in Congo's tropical forests. Sadly, it's endangered due to hunting and habitat loss. And they called it the okapi, and the Europeans refused to believe these rumors and that there could be an animal with these specifications in the first place, and they called the mythical creature the African rhinoceros, and the Western scientific community continued to ignore the fact of the existence of the okapi until the early 20th century, after they were sure that it was not just a myth, but a real animal belonging to the giraffe family, and this despite the fact that its neck is much shorter than the neck of the giraffe. The okapi inhabits the tropical forests of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and is known there as the forest giraffe. Its diet consists of leaves, grasses, and fruits. Unfortunately, the okapi is one of the endangered species due to hunting and the loss of large parts of its natural habitat, either through deforestation or mining. If it were to go extinct, it could indeed become a legend for future generations. The first time a platypus was sent to Britain for examination, scientists thought it was just a hoax. The English scientist who received the platypus's body was convinced that some skilled animal handler had glued a duck's bill onto the body of a water mammal like a beaver and claimed it was a new species of animal. And I don't want you to judge this English world as foolish, because who would believe it, that there's an animal with a tail resembling that of a beaver, and its limbs and the protruding part of its face look like a duck's bill. It comes from mammals and lays eggs, making the platypus one of 5 egg-laying mammals. It has venomous hind legs. Our world is one that ovulates, not gives birth. The platypus males have venomous spurs on their hind legs and are unique mammals with electrical receptors to sense electric fields from nearby animals, aiding in hunting and evasion. A spur secretes venom and has unique electrical receptors to sense electric fields from muscle contractions, aiding in hunting and evasion. It senses the electric fields generated by the muscle contractions of nearby animals, which serves as a sixth sense for it, helping it to hunt or escape from predators. Most people today tend to imagine dragons as being similar to dinosaurs. But the truth is that early historians used to describe dragons as huge serpents that kill their prey by wrapping around them and squeezing them until they die during their journeys. In India, the Roman historian Pliny the Elder claimed that he saw a giant dragon wrapping around a huge elephant until it suffocated it, according to his story. So the dragon died after the elephant fell on it with its massive weight. Researchers suggest that Pliny was probably describing the reticulated python, which is considered one of the largest snakes in our world. Today is long. It can sometimes exceed 9 meters, which is about the height of a 3-story building. In the early 2000s, a giant snake was discovered in South America. It was essentially a Korean legend that has no real existence, known as Titanoboa, or the giant boa. The giant snake was over 14 meters long. A building with 5 stories, and its weight exceeded 1 ton. And it has the ability to swallow a fully grown human without showing any bulge or swelling in its body at all. The kraken is considered one of the most famous sea legends of all time, a giant monster that roams the coasts of Norway and Iceland. The legend's habitat has long arms, but no proof of its existence. It is powerful, enough to destroy the most powerful sea vessels. And for many years, sailors would tell of seeing miniature versions of the kraken roaming the seas. However, no one has been able to provide proof of the existence of the mythical creature. In 1851, the French ship Elkton managed to retrieve a part of. The giant squid has been linked to the kraken. Between 1870 and 1880, Several dead giant squids were found on shores and in sperm whales' stomachs. However, these samples were mostly incomplete. The first live giant squid photo was taken in 2004 in Japan, and the first video in 2006 near California. As we learned more, we discovered its structure and characteristics are as strange as the legendary kraken. Their bodies usually bore scratches and were scarred by hours of battles with giant squid in the depths of the sea. But of course, all the specimens that were preserved up to this period were mostly incomplete and in poor condition, which did not help scientists accurately describe the squid. The first live photo of a giant squid was taken in 2004 in Japan, and the first video of a squid was recorded in 2006 off the coast of California. As we learned more about the creature, which averages 10 meters in length and weighs close to 300 kilograms, we discovered that it is no less bizarre in its build and characteristics than the legendary kraken. The giant panda was unknown to science until the mid-1800s. In 1869, Armand David sent a panda skin to Europe, confirming its existence. Hugo Weigold saw the first live panda in 1916. Scientists struggled to classify it, but DNA confirmed it as a bear. After a sample of the legendary animal's skin fell into the hands of the French missionary Armand David, she sent it to Europe. The first time a European scientist saw a living. And tearful giant panda was in 1916. The first to do so was the German zoologist Hugo Weigel. In the last century, scientists struggled to accurately classify the panda because it shares characteristics with both bears and raccoons. But DNA analysis and geneticists have proven beyond doubt that the giant panda belongs to the bear family. While the giraffe was a familiar animal to the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks treated the giraffe as a mythical creature that had no place in reality. They referred to the creature they heard about as the camelopard, based on the description they received, believing it to be an animal with the body of a camel and the skin of a leopard. The common belief among them was that this animal was the result of a mating between a camel and a leopard. Today's goal is discovering the giraffe's scientific name, camelopard, comes from a Greek myth. Romans saw giraffes when they were sent to Rome as pets and used in the Circus Maximus. People longed for dragons, inspired by fossils and folklore. Rumors of dragon-like creatures on Indonesian islands fueled the myth. The giraffe disappeared from Europe for decades and continued as a legend that derived its legitimacy from the stories circulating until the year 1486, when the ruler of Florence, Lorenzo IV, was presented with a live giraffe so that Europe could witness the first giraffe since the days of the ancient Romans. Despite their potential for terror and destruction, people have long wished for dragons to be real, inspired by massive dinosaur fossils and folklore. When rumors spread about dragon-like creatures on Indonesian islands, hopes were pinned on the myth. In 1912, the truth was revealed. The Komodo dragon, a giant lizard about 3 meters long and weighing nearly 100 kilograms. Although it lacks wings or fire, it is dangerous in its habitat. The Komodo dragon is one of the largest reptiles, with rough, armor-like skin, 60 sharp teeth, and a voracious appetite for any creature nearby. For more on the Komodo dragon, watch our separate episode. Finally, in 1912, the scientific community discovered the truth about radiation, and we got to know more closely and accurately the giant lizard known as the Komodo dragon, with its 3-meter length and weight approaching 100 kilograms, and despite its lack of dragon wings or fire, it is no less dangerous than them at all, at least in its station on Earth. The Komodo dragon is considered one of the largest animals on Earth. Its skin is rough and supported by scales and bony plates, making it more like a legendary dragon's armor with 60 sharp teeth and an open appetite to devour any creature in its surroundings, whether human or animal, living or dead creatures, or even small dragons of its own kind. If you want to know more about the Komodo dragon, you will find a separate episode for it on the channel. The Greek myth known as Jason and the Argonauts tells the story of a group of Greek heroes who set out under the leadership of the brave hero Jason on a quest to reclaim his rightful throne, which was usurped by his uncle, by retrieving the golden fleece from a legendary winged ram. Contemporary researchers believe that the golden ram depicted in the myth is inspired by a real animal known today as the golden metacreature is an animal similar to a goat or a sheep. It was first described by Western scientists in 1850, after being revealed in its habitat in the Himalayas. Although the gorilla is famous in our world today, until recently it was nothing more than a legend. Western explorers returned from Africa with two. They tell stories about a creature that looks like a giant human being, with hair all over his body, and he has terrible strength and even more terrifying nature. And these stories, they were treated as mere myths and meaningless talk with no evidence of its truth. Gorillas were first mentioned by Greek explorer Hanno. He described an island of hairy wild people on Africa's west coast. During the journey of the Greek explorer Hanno, he spoke about his travels to the west coast of Africa, about an island inhabited by wild people whose bodies are covered in hair. The local people refer to them as gorillas. And after many long decades, specifically in the year 1625 AD, the British explorer Andrew Battelle recorded his sighting. Monster, it sleeps, eats fruit, huge, frightening, human-like. The fruit? He described it as being human-like but huge and frightening in appearance. The mystery around the gorilla blurred the lines between reality and legend. Until the year 1847, when the Western explorer Thomas Savage was in Liberia, he managed to obtain gorilla bones. Gorilla, including the skull. The first official scientific description of the great apes was published, and about 10 years later, the Frenchman Paul du Chaillu became the first contemporary European explorer to see a live gorilla in the wild during his expeditions to tropical Africa. So basically, until the 1950s, the existence of gorillas in our world was limited to stories and tales, nothing more. Additionally, the mountain gorilla, which is considered one of the larger gorilla species, remained just a legend until the early 20th century. The goblin shark is more like an alien creature than a legendary monster. It is called Tengu, or the celestial dog, which is a legendary creature from Japanese folklore, characterized by a red face and a long nose. The goblin shark is considered one of the rare species of shark that always lives in the depths of the sea, measuring between 3 to 4 meters in length and having a color, closer to pink, along with a long and wide nose. The goblin shark has a retractable jaw. As it nears prey, its mouth expands. A giant jaw emerges, resembling a second mouth, described in the 19th century by David Starr. The shark's mouth expands, revealing a giant jaw, like a second mouth, described in the 19th century by biologist David Starr. A giant jaw protrudes from it, as if it has another mouth inside its mouth, something like what we see in science fiction movies and alien creatures. It was scientifically described in the late 19th century by the American biologist David Starr. It is difficult to convince any of your friends. This shark is not a mythical creature unless he watches a video of himself. That's it, we're done. Who made it this far? Like if you reached the end, suggest episodes in comments. Let's see how many of you made it to the end. And don't forget, if you have any suggestions for an episode, write them down in the comments. Most of the episodes we create now are based on your comments. Peace.